it's such a vast culture that you're going to learn something new all the time. Sort of that feeling. It's like, okay, I did something and now someone else took it, did something cool with it, and I think everyone enjoys that. We're going to return to a lot of the factionalism during the Civil War. I think we're going to have a country split like that, but maybe instead of South versus North, it would be more like coasts versus central, the center of America. Or is there going to be some kind of other format that people are going to use to find newer movies? All of the attention's on you and who you're playing with, and no one can really take that away from you. Dude, I'm honestly doing really good. It's raining outside. I kind of like the storm.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's actually been quite rainy over here too. So yeah, it's just really nice being indoors.
Definitely.
I know that tomorrow it's supposed to rain pretty much all day, but I have to go out, which kind of bummed me out. But yeah. No, definitely during these times. But yeah, it's good to hear that you're okay, and especially with the whole pandemic and everything. How
Definitely.
how is that treating you?
Uh, it's not as bad as I probably initially thought it would be. I'm still able to see friends, whether it's through Skype
Mm,
or just meeting up, but only two or three of us, to abide by the social distancing
of course.
rules.
But yeah, you're still able to well to essentially continue seeing friends and being social, even with all the restrictions.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's cool. Well, yeah, as I said, thanks for finally planning with. I know we've had like so many attempts so
Yeah.
far. I'm just glad that we were able to actually get it to work this time. So that's good. I just wanted to ask you about, well, actually ask you about Herbert West. What's the story behind that
So
name?
there's a film called Reanimator, and it's based on a story by H.P. Lovecraft, and the story is called Herbert West Reanimator, and so he's the main character of the story. And it was one of those first horror movies I saw because I don't know if you're familiar with the YouTuber, the Angry Video Game Nerd. He had made these videos. He called them Monster Madness, and basically every Halloween for the whole month of October, he'd talk about a film each day or each week, and one of them was Reanimator. And I thought, okay, this is an interesting movie because I used to really hate scary movies, but this one seemed like it had a sense of humor, and so I watched it eventually, and I really liked the film. I loved the character because he was kind of unique for a horror film protagonist because he's not the final girl. He's not Jason Voorhees. He's kind of just this sadistic scientist.
Yeah, that's interesting. And as you said, that was your sort of first introduction to horror.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I definitely loved the Universal monsters, but I
Right.
wasn't ever scared of them. But I remember being about, I think, 9 or 10, and my dad was like, "Oh, we're gonna watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre," and I was terrified. So it definitely was a more official introduction to horror.
Wow, your dad showed you Texas Chainsaw Massacre at like 10 years old?
Yeah, well, he didn't actually show it to me because I told him I was too scared to watch it. So he was just
Right.
like, "Yeah, okay." He was just trying to scare me.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think but to get it straight, this isn't like a modern movie by any means, right?
No, I think it was 1985 it released.
Oh wow. Yeah. So you what do you think of modern day horror then? I mean, since you got into sort of that era of horror?
Uh, I think that it's on an upturn in a way. I think that you're always going to have good ones and bad ones, and I think nowadays it's harder to find the good ones. But I will say there's been a lot of mainstream ones that, whether I enjoyed them personally or not, have been very high quality, like Midsummer or Hereditary or Get Out. They're high quality movies.
Definitely. What did you think of Midsummer? Because that
I
was a
you know
trip.
I liked the spectacle of it. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I
Hmm.
definitely enjoyed the direction and I loved the gore. I thought that it was handled in like a really
Hmm.
disturbing way because it just seemed so real. It wasn't in like an excessive like Friday the 13th kind of way. It was just like very matter of fact, and I really liked that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, up to like, I really like the idea. And as you said, the effects are really what I think puts the movie on its own level. But at some point, I just couldn't take it seriously. I think actually from a very early on point in the movie, I just said, okay, this is not going to scare me. I'm going to be very interested,
Yeah,
but it's not scary at all. I think it's like probably from the minute that they arrive in the camp. Um, I don't know. It might be just a reaction because this is the same guy who made Hereditary, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so Hereditary, on the other hand, I couldn't finish. Um, I had to stop watching. Well, I had to stop watching the first time because I felt way too
Yeah.
impacted, and then the second time I just got bored. But that's on me. Like to compare the two movies, Hereditary had such an impactful moment on me that I had to actually stop watching. While Midsummer, I enjoyed it, but yeah, not scary at all. So yeah, I just found that interesting mainly. But you enjoy Hereditary more?
Definitely. I think it was, like you said, it was just tonally. I think Hereditary was a lot more cohesive. While with Midsummer, I think that there's a lot of parts in the movie that kind of drag, and so you don't
Hmm.
really know how to feel. And I think that the movie wraps up so suddenly that I don't think it earns that
Hmm.
resolution because I think the middle part of that movie isn't that interesting.
You do realize, you do recognize sort of this upshift in recent horror that's sort of taken it away from maybe the sort of slasher genre.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's unique in a way because this kind of, I would guess you'd call it like thoughtful horror, has never really been like a mainstream thing. Because I think a few years ago it was all about ghosts, and then before that, like you said, it was slasher movies and horror remakes. And now we still have remakes every now and then, but now it really is this sort of artistic approach to horror, and I think it has its drawbacks, and definitely like it's there's things about it that are great.
Yeah, no, that's true. Did I get this right? Did you go to film school at one point, or are you in film school right now?
I technically am, yeah. It's
Oh,
not because I'm in a community college. It's not like my official degree, but
mm-hmm.
I've definitely, yeah, I've taken the courses.
Oh wow. What is film school exactly for someone who has no idea what it entails?
So, at least from the community college point of view, it's a lot of different courses, but you're usually going to take intro to the film. So it's like you're learning a lot of the conventions, like what is a plot, characters, stuff like that. But you're also learning, in a very, very mild sense, how to use film. But it's interesting because a lot of filmmakers today, like on YouTube, don't really use 35 millimeter film or 16, but they still teach you that anyway, which is pretty valuable.
What's sort of the value in it?
I'd say it's for me personally, I would love to use film myself, even if it is expensive. I think that it has a unique look, but in the same sense, I think that digital has value to it too. I think that there are certain movies that look better on film, some movies that look better on digital. Like I don't mind how Star Wars looks digital.
But there is this sort of, I guess, gap. I mean, do you think the industry is going to phase out film in the future, or is film sort of just such a big element of movies and filming that it'll
I
probably
think that
stay?
it's always going to be both because you have most of the industry is using digital, which has been the norm for think about the last 10, maybe 20 years, if I'm correct. But you also have people like Christopher Nolan or Quentin Tarantino who are obviously giants in the Hollywood world, and they use actual film. And I think that if you have people like that who have that standing in Hollywood and want to use film, it's going to
Mm.
stay around. It's never going to probably be the majority of what movies are presented in, but it's still going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Going back to the film school, what was this something that you always wanted to get into,
I definitely
movies and
always
cinema?
wanted to do film. I definitely went back and forth about actually going to film school. And to tell you the truth, I'm not completely decided because it's not, I'm just doing like my general studies to get an associate's degree.
Right. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter too much if I pursue it or not. But I've definitely always had that drive. I think since I was pretty young, I at least wanted to be in movies. And then at one point I thought, okay, well, how about making them? Because I can come up with these ideas that I really like. And I think now it's like almost like I just want to do all of that.
What were sort of your expectations?
I didn't really know what to think because it was kind of vague in how it described things. It was sort of almost mysterious in a way because it didn't really say too many of the specifics. Just said you were going to learn about the
Right.
history of
Yeah.
film uh, and like how to use film and stuff like that. It was very vague, and so all I really thought was that okay, maybe we might be able to film like one thing.
Sort of what did the course lead up to? Was it mainly on the history, or were you able to also do some practical stuff?
It was mostly the like you said, the history, but near the end we were allowed to do something with 16 millimeter, and it was honestly a lot of fun overall. I mean, it definitely most of it, like you said, like I said, it's book work, but by the end of it, I think it's worth it.
So, what are your next plans with this?
Well, me and a few friends, we have a sort of like I guess you could call it a production company. It's more of just a YouTube channel at the moment, but we're in the process of making a short film. We've already done one, and it was about I think 12 minutes. This one's going to be could be up to 30 minutes,
Hmm.
and we're working on that right now. And it's just a much bigger thing because we had to like seal a location that was not just somewhere we could film for free. But we got sort of lucky because our director ended up getting a job at the location, so now we can film there for free.
Oh, that's great. Can we know a little bit about what the movie is going to be about, or is that all in production and will come out later?
Uh, man, I don't know. I'll just say that it's a horror western.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, I've never. Yeah, I'm coming up blank on any movie that. Well, I guess Westworld sort of
Yeah, there's some
hints
elements
to
there.
that a little bit. But yeah, no, I'm really curious about that. Okay, it's a very I think unique mix to that genre
Yeah, I
of
think
horror
it'll
movie.
definitely surprise some people.
Okay, well, looking forward to that. Definitely. Um, yeah, and so with this production house at the moment, you're planning on developing it and sort of growing
Yes,
with it. Is that
absolutely.
for now? I guess one of the big things in ever since well, for the past couple of years has been a huge move to online streaming. With that, Netflix, Amazon Prime, all these different companies have come up, and also recently, older companies such as Disney have been taking it up too. Do you think this would affect the cinema world in any way?
It'll definitely have some sort of impact. I don't know if it's going to be positive or negative. The way I see it is this: uh, this is probably an unpopular opinion. I don't think that streaming is as strong or as formidable as a lot of people think, because I noticed like Netflix loses a lot of money. Uh, I mean, Hulu, I think, is pretty unpopular. It's really almost just like people have it just because it's the only way to watch a lot of shows unless you have on demand. And I think that the future of streaming is probably going to be more like IMDb TV, where it's uh, it's free streaming with ads. Unfortunately, I think that's the future of streaming. However, I do think that Disney Plus is unique because it's a brand name, and I think people, for some reason, are going to stick with it because when you have exclusive content like The Mandalorian or all those Marvel shows, I think that is going to draw people. And with Netflix, I feel like they're sort of like running out of ideas. I mean, they have Stranger Things, but I don't think they are. I don't think they're presenting enough competition. The Irishman was a great movie, but I think that it's it doesn't have like mainstream appeal, and I think that a lot of their other productions are the same way. There are exceptions like Orange is the New Black, but I mean they wiped away their whole Marvel slate, so I don't know what Netflix has in the cards, and Hulu. I don't think their original series are really popular at all.
In my view, I think it's always been about commodity and like how quickly people can get to just a general amount of content. And Netflix, I remember being really great because for the price that you had to pay, you would be able to pretty much watch a huge library of content. But as soon as licensing started to happen, most of that content went away. So yeah, I think and it went back to as you said, these companies with exclusive deals. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point that the library really took a
Yeah.
hit. So I wonder now if, does this mean that people are going to turn to video stores, or is there going to be some kind of other format that people are going to use to find newer movies? Because I mean, during this time, there have been a few movies that were released straight to on demand, and they made considerable money. So I do wonder if, because of all these different streaming services not having a complete library, does that mean that people are just going to have six different streaming services, or what really is going to happen from now?
Yeah, because essentially, like, what it's difficult to kind of look back and think of did we do before that, because obviously there were movie stores which were very easy to access, but then again, we had DVD players and before that VHS players. I don't know anyone at the moment that has a DVD player. So, well, obviously you'd have to directly buy it and download it there. I don't know. It's interesting, and as you said with library, then you get into that conflict of, do you actually own some? Well, you don't own anything if you subscribe to any of these services. Those movies can disappear from at any point. So yeah,
Indeed.
no, it is interesting. Definitely there. But yeah. Um. So at this point, you obviously started your I guess your interest in horror movies from Herbert West from there.
Yeah.
Uh, did this sprout out in other in sort of the in that genre, or was it only on this movie?
Uh, I think I definitely gained an interest in more obscure films from there because it's not just a horror movie, but it's also a grindhouse movie. It's somewhat underground. And I think more so now than even at that time, I've definitely garnered an interest more in that kind of stuff.
If let's say you had to introduce someone to these obscure movies or grindhouse movies, what are some movies that you would recommend?
Uh, One that comes to mind for sure is Deadbeat at Dawn. I think that one that's something everyone would want to see. I think because it's sort of it's definitely grimy underground, but it's still something that I think most people would watch and be like, "Hey, that was pretty good."
What I wanted to also ask is, how did you? So I assume at one point, the thing is, I don't really remember how you came to the forum on MTVB, because either you were under a different username on Roblox. There's just a missing gap there that I can't really quite figure out. Did you come from the Roblox MTVB,
Yeah, I
or
came
did you come
from the
after?
Roblox one. I think I had multiple
Mm,
usernames. I had Dr. Lovecraft. I had the Ultimate Joker
right.
oh 09.
Yes. Oh, okay. And you were there. I mean, obviously on this interest of movies, there you found this community there. What what did you think of the community back there on
It
Roblox?
was probably the coolest thing ever because it was strange to have friends that not only liked movies but they liked horror movies. Like it was a unique feeling and it felt great
Mm.
because it was just I had never had that experience in real life.
One thing that I found when I was looking through some of your stuff is you actually play in a band. Is that right?
Well, it's gone back and forth because it's just the thing with music is it's so unreliable. It
Mm.
you'll have like three songs written and then someone a part of the group will just say I don't want to do this anymore, and that's
All
just
right.
unfortunately the nature of that stuff.
What kind of music did you play, or do you play at the moment?
So at that time we were just going straight for like for more of a straightforward alternative metal sound, but now I'm not sure what I really want to do. I think that the best option for me right now is to learn how to do electronic music because it's a lot easier to do on your own, and to learn to mix is not just great for like your own music, but I think a lot of people would pay to have their music mixed.
So, what was your role in the when you were singing in a band, when you were playing in a
So it
band?
was really just vocals, and we all pretty much contributed some kind of lyrics.
Oh, and did you? I mean, did you ever record stuff or perform?
We recorded three songs, and then we did perform twice, and it was great both times. But I think that just about like I'd say
Mm,
like half the band was probably very
right,
afraid to be on stage, and then you have one person that just decides, I don't want to play anymore.
and then that trickles down onto other people as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
How does it feel, sort of being on a band, being on the stage with them?
It's really it's an incredible feeling. I mean, it's very empowering because all the attention's on you
Mm,
and who you're playing with, and no one can really take that away from you. No one can sing those lyrics for you. No one can play those guitars. It's you and your group. That's how it is.
what do you think is the toughest thing in that moment when you're performing?
I think sometimes it's taking away the self-awareness because you might think, oh, that note didn't sound right, or I probably look stupid right now, and you have to just put that in a box somewhere else.
Hmm. Is there are there any techniques that singers or you use to sort of um, I don't know, maybe get ready for that one moment or hype yourself up?
For me,
I don't
it's
know.
probably singing around people that aren't in the band that are like friends of ours, like people we have a high opinion of, so we don't want to
Hmm.
embarrass ourselves in front of.
Oh, right. So when you can sing for them, then it doesn't. You can sing for pretty much anyone
Yeah, exactly.
because that's interesting. Yeah, it must take a lot of guts though to go straight to like someone who you think highly of and perform something that.
It's scary, but it's almost necessary because it's like you don't want to jump straight onto stage or something.
Sure, no, definitely. And did you write the songs or was that someone else?
Lyrics were shared pretty evenly around among us. Music was written by the guitarist and then sometimes the bassist.
And but the next step for you is electronic music.
Definitely.
I was just curious. You have an interesting sort of family origin in the sense. I correct me if I'm wrong, but are you a part or fully Native American?
Yeah, both my parents have indigenous heritage.
I mean, obviously, do many people in your community also have that same background?
Uh, Not in this part of Florida, but I know in southern Florida, I think there are a lot of people that not the same tribe as me because I my mother's Muskogee and my dad's Navajo. I wouldn't say that you would find those tribes in Florida, but I think there's a lot of Native Americans in Florida.
Did that ever affect you when you were in school or growing up?
I was pretty unaware of the heritage until I'd taken it's like our standardized test. They tell you like your ethnic origin. I was like, I didn't know I was a Native American, and then I asked my mom about it, and she explained it, and yeah, that was kind of how it came about.
Oh, I mean, did that change your view on anything? Did that affect you at that point when you found out?
It definitely changed probably my perspective on a lot of things. It's like, okay, this is a whole new culture to really understand. I think it's such a vast culture that you're going to learn something new all the time.
I also feel that it's a culture that, at least from my view, is rarely talked about. At least in sort of a standardized way. I remember not learning much. I was in school in the U.S. for a brief period of time, and we were learning the history of the U.S. And there was very little given to indigenous tribes there at the time. Um, and both my parents are anthropologists, so I learned a lot from them actually. Um, do you find this sort of a big issue in the States?
Yeah, I think it's weird that it's not a greater part of the education because I mean those are the people that lived here before all of us, but it's not really a huge part of the curriculum. But I think that it really should be because there's a lot of that culture that was lost. So you might as well teach what we have.
At this point, after finding out, after sort of living there, do you have a closer connection to any of this culture, or does it still remain sort of a distant thing?
I'd say I definitely I have like online friends who are they're indigenous from different even from different countries. People that are Maori from New Zealand, or I have friends that are in Manitoba that are I'm not sure what tribe they'd be from Manitoba. The people that really just all over the world really. And so, in addition to that, I think I've definitely developed an interest in the religion as well.
And but how would you describe yourself now spiritually, if you'd like to share that?
I'd say that I try to keep an open mind. I think that I'm not convinced on anything yet. Like I haven't made a decision about a lot of that stuff, but I think that I always try to keep an open mind about it. I think that there's truth from so many different, ways. It's like I might as well just listen to what people have to say.
Are there any main problems that you think Indigenous people face?
I'd say in the U.S., a lot of it is just the sort of erasure of the history and the culture. I think that it's something that a lot of people, Native American or not, probably feel that whether it is in the education system or national monuments, that the history is not really presented as equal to the United States of America. And I'd say that when you look at uh, police statistics, for example, a lot of Indigenous people are killed by police, and I think it's an even greater issue in Canada, if I'm correct, because there's plenty of people, mostly Indigenous women, that go missing and they're never found. So I think it's definitely a problem in the U.S., but it's probably even greater in Canada.
I know with the US at least, there are, I forget the exact name, but there are areas which are completely I'm not sure if preserved is the right word, but
Uh,
um, reservations,
Reservations.
right? What's sort of your stance on that?
I, you know, I think the idea of those kind of things are good, but the problem is the execution's always really bad because when you go to these places, I mean, they're not very nice places to live,
Mm.
and I think that's the main problem. I think that it's something you see in a lot of different countries. You'll have places within the country that are for a certain ethnic or religious group, and sometimes it's a nice place to be. But I think in America, a lot of the reservations they're not very nice, and there's a lot of alcoholism, early death, crime, and I think a lot of it has to do with just a lot of poverty.
And but what's the sort of so is it mainly a state decision to keep these reservations at the current level, or are there pushes to sort of improve the area?
I'd say that it's really an issue that I think people they want to change, but it's something that it's almost like all this stuff's in a vacuum because you have this issue, but then you have the Dakota pipeline, which is something that's
Right.
just as important. So I think that it's one of those things. It's a lot like police brutality or uh, income inequality, where we want to change these things, but it's like it's such an ingrained issue that we just have to focus on the problems that are a little bit easier to dismantle.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And what do you think? I mean, I think that at least in some aspects, depictions of indigenous tribes and people have a large part to play, especially in the history of film. Did you ever cover that in any of your studies?
So I've kind of looked at that in more of an independent way, like just coming across movies on my own. And I think it's definitely much like how they've portrayed women or any other minorities in cinema. Early on, it probably wasn't great. There's examples of respectful portrayals early on, but there's a lot of them that are, you could say they're stereotypes and negative ones at that. And I think that over time, it's sort of shifted from being the stereotype to really just having no no place in cinema. But I would say there's some movies that have changed that. I know there was a newer movie. It was a remake of an older film, The Magnificent Seven, that had an actual indigenous person in it, and it was a big movie. It was pretty good too, and I think that was sort of a change. But I think that because there's not this big grab to really even cast indigenous people. That's sort of where the problem is. You don't have a lot of indigenous directors, producers, actors, actresses, and if they are out there, they're independent. They're not in the Hollywood system. So I do wonder if in the next decade or couple of years, with Hollywood trying to be more diverse, you'll see actors that are Native American in leading roles.
So for a long time, Hollywood, and I think it still is, but it definitely was more in the past. Hollywood was sort of like the golden standard for movie making. Not so much that it made really good movies, but in the sense that that's where all the biggest movies were made. Do you think that's still going to be that's still going to be like that, um, even if there are a lot more lower budget productions being made, a lot more independent artists, and with all the um, sort of scandals that Hollywood's come through over the past decade.
Uh, it's a good question. I think what could happen is that they'll keep producing movies that I think the audiences will eventually get tired of, and they're going to start distributing stuff that's independent. But I don't think it'll be anything too subversive. You'll see movies like Midsummer or Hereditary, like more stuff like that in the theater, because I think that eventually people are going to grow tired of like Marvel movies or stuff of that nature, or even like a lot of what are the animated movies now, I think that people might start asking a bit more of them because I think when you compare what we have now to what Pixar was doing in the early 2000s and the late 90s, I think the quality has diminished.
Really? So it's better even with the animated movies.
Yeah, I think that the quality of the animation, like in a visual way, has definitely improved in a lot of great ways. But I think that unfortunately, the medium has remained only for children, which that's been the nature for a good amount of time. But I think that we're ready to see something that's a little bit more mature, and I think that not in the way of like Sausage Party. Like I think that maybe audiences are ready to see an animated movie that's for adults, but it's serious.
Hmm. Yeah, that's I've never actually thought. Yeah, I remember Sausage Party coming out, and yeah, it being I don't know if you'd call it a mess, but it was definitely like I don't know. You yeah, it was definitely very comedy heavy, and definitely didn't take itself seriously, which sort of makes everyone else not take it seriously. I don't know. Um, yeah, it's interesting thinking about an animated movie more for adults, or at least having that creative
Yeah,
freedom to explore ideas which aren't restricted just for children. Um, and yeah, so that. But yeah, I've actually thought of that being a case, and because it's definitely like animated movies are definitely something that's probably very difficult to do if you're independent. I would imagine. Um,
yeah. I think that there were a lot of them in the '70s. One of my favorite directors, Ralph Bakshi, he did his animated films independently, and he was still able to get enough distribution to make profits off of them. But you don't really see that nowadays. I just think the interest in animation is kind of decreased, and now it's really just studios putting them out to answer to a demand from like all families that want to go to the theater and see these movies, which is fine. But I think that we deserve to see something
yeah,
different.
definitely. So at the moment, with the political standpoint that the U.S. is in, um, what do you think are some of the main? I mean, what do you think the future looks like for the U.S. at the moment? I know that's a very uh, layered question, but what is your current opinion?
Gosh, 2020 has already thrown any psychic a curveball. I mean, there's no way to really predict any of this stuff. Uh, I think that after this point, it's confusing to me because so many things happen. Like you're like, oh yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. You have something that just comes out of nowhere, like COVID-19. And I think that for the future of the U.S., I think that unless the government's able to pull the wool over people's eyes and sort of, you know, use some sort of tragedy or something to unite the country, I think that we're going to return to a lot of the factionalism during the Civil War. I think we're going to have a country split like that, but maybe instead of South versus North, it would be more like coasts versus central, the center of America, or any other kind of way.
Right.
But I definitely think it's going to be we're going to become only more divided unless something happens that brings the country together. But I don't really see that happening.
Hmm. Do you think it's also going to be a generational thing?
It really could be. I think that maybe Gen Z is just going to be the one that changes a lot of things, hopefully for the better, because I think, we've done a lot of things where it's just like, wow, I mean, I didn't expect, everyone to just go out and protest. I mean, it's like, I don't think that's ever really happened in the way it has, you know, since maybe the '70s.
But it's also amazing to see the response that's had, um, both um, from people protesting, but also from the police that came out. Because I remember police brutality, like before the protest being something of oh, you know, maybe it happens in some places, and if it does, it's very like rare, only a few bad apples. And then after the protest, when all of the video footage came out of the police just tear gassing people and breaking up riots, to something very difficult to dispute.
Yeah, I think that,
Mm.
like you said, I think our perspective of this stuff has changed because before it was like you said, people thought, oh, it just happens here and there, maybe somewhere in the South, and now it's like it's happening really all over the country. And I think that now it's only going to become a more apparent issue. I don't think it's going to be able to be swept under the rug very much. Maybe older generations will be able to ignore it, but I think the Gen Z and millennials, I think, are not going to forget that. They're not going to ignore it.
Troubling times. Yeah.
Definitely.
Um, You are also known on the forums, and I think you are. I'm pretty sure that you are the first person to make an what you call an MTVB in underscore
Yeah.
movie or TV series, which I found very well, very interesting. I've done a couple myself, and I always struggle. It's just really hard for me because, and maybe it's my need to include everyone or find the right characters. But how did the first idea of doing it, if you remember, came about?
I'm not sure. I think I always had the idea of doing it because I would do it with like my friends, like say, oh, you remind me of this guy or this guy, like if we were playing like superheroes or something.
Mm.
And there's this new channel called El Rey. It was basically the channel from the director of Spy Kids, Machete, Desperado, El Mariachi. And the first night the channel aired, they showed the movie Escape from New York, and I thought, okay, this movie's easy to kind of pick people from and say like, oh, this is this could be this person, this could be that person.
Right, yeah. And I think it's funny how you get such a positive reaction from people just being included in these and them being able to really emphasize with a character.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Did you? What was your feeling when you got included in an MTVB in which wasn't your own one?
it's really it's honestly awesome. I think it's sort of like when an artist has a song and then it gets sampled by someone else who they actually really like. Sort of that feeling. It's like, okay, I did something and now
Mm.
someone else took it, did something cool with it, and I think everyone enjoys that.
Have you ever been cast as a character which you didn't agree with, or you didn't agree with someone's portrayal?
It's probably been so many of them that there was, but I can't even remember. I guess I'm just the kind of person I try to remember the good things.
That's a very good outlook on life. I think if everyone could do that, they would be very
I
happy.
agree.
All right. Well, I've asked you a lot of questions. Did you have anything to say to the forum as a whole in general?
I feel bad for not talking more, but it's just I have so much stuff to do. But you know, I hope I can start carving out more time, and because you guys are awesome. I mean, it's just we can just come on here and talk about anything. You walk away just feeling better about it.